Marcus Bentley was worth $3.7 billion. He had everything a man could want: private jets, mansions on 3 continents, a tech empire that revolutionized the industry, and the admiration of millions. But Marcus Bentley had one philosophy that he proclaimed louder than all his achievements: God doesn't exist. And if he did, Marcus Bentley didn't need him. For 15 years, Marcus built his empire on this foundation. He mocked faith. He ridiculed believers. He wrote best-selling books with titles like The God Delusion is Real and How I Built Billions Without Divine Help. But there was one day, one specific day, when Marcus went too far. And what happened in the next 24 hours didn't just humble him, it shattered every belief he'd ever held. This is the true story of the fastest fall from grace the business world has ever witnessed. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will remind you that some forces in this universe cannot be mocked. And pride, as the Bible warns, always comes before the fall. Marcus Bentley wasn't born wealthy. He grew up in a small town in Ohio, the son of a factory worker and a schoolteacher. His parents were devout Christians who took him to church every Sunday, made him pray before meals, and taught him that God had a plan for his life. Marcus hated every second of it. 12-year-old Marcus would complain every Sunday morning. It's boring. His father, a patient man with tired eyes, would respond the same way every time. Son, one day you'll understand that we need God, not when things are easy, but when they're hard. But Marcus never trusted. When he was 16, his father died of a heart attack while working a double shift at the factory. Marcus watched his mother pray for a miracle that never came. He watched the church community bring casseroles and prayers, but no money to help with the mounting bills. And something inside Marcus hardened. If God is real, 17-year-old Marcus said to his mother after the funeral, then he's either cruel or incompetent. His mother's face fell, tears streaming down her cheeks. Marcus, don't say that. God didn't take your father away from us. This broken world— Save it, Mom, Marcus interrupted, his voice cold. I'm done with fairy tales. From now on, I'm only trusting what I can see, measure, and control. He was 18 when he left for MIT on a full scholarship. He was 23 when he started his first tech company. He was 30 when he sold that company for $400 million. He was 35 when his second company, Bentley Technologies, went public and made him a billionaire. And with every success, Marcus's contempt for faith grew louder. At 38, he gave a TED Talk that went viral, 20 million views in 1 week. In the talk, Marcus was charismatic, articulate, and merciless. He said to thunderous applause, "Successful people take responsibility. We don't wait for some invisible deity to solve our problems. We don't pray for opportunities. We create them. We don't ask for blessings. We earn them." Religion is the excuse of the unmotivated. The audience loved it. Silicon Valley celebrated him. Atheist organizations made him their poster child. His book sales skyrocketed. But not everyone was impressed. A pastor in Texas wrote him a letter. "Mr. Bentley, I'm praying for you. Your success is impressive, but your soul is in danger. God is not mocked." Marcus read the letter to his executive team during a meeting, and they all laughed. "Look at this," he said, holding it up. "Some religious fanatic thinks his prayers are going to— what? Make me poor?" He crumpled the letter and tossed it in the trash. Let him pray. His chief operating officer, Jennifer, a brilliant strategist with an MBA from Harvard, hesitated. "Marcus, maybe you shouldn't be so public about all this. A lot of our customers are religious people. It might alienate—" "Jen," Marcus interrupted, his voice sharp. "We don't build companies by being afraid of imaginary consequences. Let the religious people pray. I'll keep innovating." But Jennifer's concern wasn't unfounded. Marcus's mockery was getting more aggressive, more personal, more deliberate. He started a podcast called The Rational Billionaire, where he interviewed other successful atheists and spent entire episodes dismantling religious arguments. He gave interviews where he said things like, "If God exists, why hasn't he struck me down yet? I've been calling him out for 15 years. And then came December 7th, the day Marcus Bentley went too far. December 7th started like any other day for Marcus Bentley. He woke up at 5 a.m. in his penthouse overlooking Manhattan. He worked out with his personal trainer. He checked his stock portfolio. Bentley Technologies was up another 4%. Life was perfect. At 9 a.m., he had a video conference with his board of directors. They were discussing the launch of their newest product, a revolutionary AI system that would change the industry. "Marcus, the projections are incredible," his CFO reported. "We're looking at $15 billion in revenue within the first year." Marcus smiled, that confident, almost arrogant smile that had become his trademark. "Gentlemen, this is what happens when you work hard and don't waste time on superstition. While others are in church on Sundays, I'm here innovating. While others are praying, I'm executing." The board members laughed, used to Marcus's speeches by now. After the meeting, Marcus had an interview scheduled with a major news network. It was supposed to be about his new product launch. But the interviewer, a woman named Rebecca Mills, had other plans. "Mr. Bentley," she began, her tone professional but pointed, "you're known not just for your business success, but for your very vocal atheism. You've said some controversial things about religion and faith." Marcus leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. "Rebecca, let me ask you something. Do you worry that the tooth fairy might be real? Do you worry that Santa Claus is watching you? No?" Rebecca pressed further. "But billions of people around the world believe in God. Millions report experiencing miracles, answered prayers, divine encounters." Marcus's smile faded slightly, replaced by something colder. "Yes, Rebecca. They are. It's called confirmation bias. It's called coincidence. It's called the human brain desperately trying to find meaning in a meaningless universe. I've built $3.7 billion without once consulting a prayer book. I've revolutionized entire industries without once asking for divine guidance," Rebecca asked. Marcus laughed, actually laughed on camera. "That's the most absurd argument of all. You're telling me that the only reason people don't murder and steal is because they're afraid of cosmic punishment? That's pathetic. I don't need God to tell me not to hurt people. I have empathy. I have reason. I have society." The interview went viral within hours, but this time the reaction was different. Even some of Marcus's supporters thought he'd crossed a line. "Too aggressive," one tech blogger wrote, but Marcus didn't care. That evening, he attended a fundraising gala for a children's hospital. Ironic, given his views, but good for PR. At the gala, he gave a speech that would become infamous. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began, the crowd of New York's elite hanging on his every word, "I'm often asked why I give so much to charity if I don't believe in God. The answer is simple. I don't need the promise of heaven to do good. I don't need the threat of hell to avoid evil." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some clapped hesitantly. Others remained silent. Marcus continued, his voice growing louder, more passionate. "You know what I think? I think humanity has wasted centuries on religious nonsense. Imagine what we could have accomplished if we'd spent all that time, energy, and resources on science instead of superstition. Imagine the diseases we could have cured, the poverty we could have ended." Now the room was truly uncomfortable. A few people got up and left, but Marcus was on a roll. "So here's my challenge," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "If God is real, if he's all-powerful and all-knowing like you believers claim, then let him prove it. Let him show up right now. Let him strike me down for my blasphemy." He spread his arms wide, a mocking gesture of invitation. "I'm waiting, God. Come on. Show these people you're real." The silence in the room was deafening. Nothing happened. Marcus lowered his arms and smiled triumphantly. See? Nothing. Because there's nothing there. He walked off the stage to scattered, nervous applause. Most of the audience sat in stunned silence. In the back of the room, an elderly woman, one of the hospital's longtime donors, bowed her head and whispered a prayer. God have mercy on that man's soul. The time was 8:47 p.m. on December 7th. 24 hours later, Marcus Bentley would have nothing. Marcus returned to his penthouse that night feeling triumphant. He poured himself a glass of scotch, the expensive kind, the kind that costs more than most people make in a month, and stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city below. Master of the universe, he said to himself, raising his glass to his reflection. And I did it all without any divine help. He went to bed at midnight, completely unaware that his world was about to implode. At 3:17 a.m., Marcus woke up with chest pain, sharp, crushing pain that radiated down his left arm. He sat up, gasping for air, reaching for his phone to call 911, but then the pain subsided. Just like that. Gone. Stress, Marcus muttered to himself. I've been working too hard. He took some antacids and went back to sleep. At 6 o'clock a.m., his phone exploded with notifications, dozens of calls, hundreds of messages. His head of PR was calling him repeatedly. What? Marcus answered, irritated at being woken up. Marcus, we have a problem, his PR director said, his voice panicked. Someone leaked internal documents. They're everywhere, on every major news site, financial records, emails, contracts. Marcus sat up, suddenly fully awake. What documents? What are you talking about? The offshore accounts, the tax evasion schemes, the bribery documents from the Chinese government deal, the suppressed safety reports on our products. Marcus, everything is out there. Everything. The blood drained from Marcus's face. Those documents were supposed to be impossible to access. They were encrypted, hidden behind layers of security, but somehow, overnight, they'd been leaked to every major news outlet in the world. By 7 o'clock a.m., Bentley Technologies stock had dropped 15%. By 8 o'clock a.m., it was down 30%. The board was calling emergency meetings. Investors were panicking. The SEC announced an investigation. Marcus's lawyer called at 8:30 a.m. Marcus, this is bad, really bad. We're talking potential criminal charges, tax evasion, fraud, bribery of foreign officials. You could be looking at serious prison time. How did this happen? Marcus shouted into the phone. Who leaked those files? We don't know. But Marcus, there's more. Your head of security just informed me that your personal accounts have been compromised. Someone has accessed your offshore holdings. Marcus pulled up his banking app with shaking hands. His Cayman Islands account, the one holding $800 million, empty. Completely empty. Just gone. What? How? Marcus couldn't form words. His heart was racing. The chest pain from earlier returned, stronger this time. At 9 o'clock a.m., his executive assistant burst into his office, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Bentley, I need to tell you something. I'm so sorry. I'm the one who leaked the documents. Marcus stared at her, unable to process what he was hearing. You? Sarah? You've worked for me for 10 years. Sarah was sobbing now. You don't know what you did. My brother, my little brother, he killed himself 3 months ago. He worked for one of your factories overseas. The safety conditions were horrible, but you suppressed the reports. He was injured in an accident that should never have happened. He couldn't work. He couldn't support his family. He took his own life. And you just covered it up like it was nothing. Sarah, No! She screamed. You don't get to talk. You stand there and mock God, you mock faith, you mock people who believe in something bigger than themselves. But you're the most immoral person I've ever met. You're a liar and a cheat. and you destroy people's lives for profit. So yes, I leaked the documents. And I hope you lose everything just like my brother did." She turned and walked out, leaving Marcus standing alone in his office, the walls closing in around him. By noon, Marcus Bentley was the top trending topic on every social media platform. But this time, it wasn't admiration. It was outrage. Billionaire Marcus Bentley exposed as fraud. Bentley Technologies CEO facing criminal investigation. The fall of Marcus Bentley. Pride before the fall. That last headline stung. Pride before the fall. The Bible verse he'd mocked so many times was now being used to describe his downfall. At 1:00 p.m., the board of directors held an emergency meeting. They voted unanimously to remove Marcus as CEO, effective immediately. They cited ethical violations and criminal liability as grounds for termination. At 2:00 p.m., his wife's lawyer called. Victoria, his wife of 12 years, was filing for divorce. And she wasn't just leaving him, she was taking half of everything. Or at least half of what was left. "Victoria has been very clear," the lawyer said coldly. "She's been unhappy for years. She stayed for the lifestyle, but now that the lifestyle is collapsing, she sees no reason to remain. She'll be holding a press conference later today." Marcus tried calling Victoria directly. She didn't answer. He tried again. Nothing. Finally, he got a text message. "You chose money and pride over everything else. Now you have neither. Goodbye, Marcus." At 3:00 p.m., his mother called. Marcus almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Marcus," his mother's voice was quiet, sad. "I saw the news. I want you to know that I'm praying for you." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Praying? Mom, your prayers didn't save Dad. They won't save me either." "Marcus, please listen to me. This is a wake-up call. God is trying to get your attention. You've spent 15 years running from him, mocking him, building your life on pride and arrogance. But God loves you too much to let you destroy yourself completely. He's allowing everything to fall apart so you'll finally look up and see that you need him." "I don't need anyone," Marcus shouted. "Especially not some cosmic tyrant who orchestrates my destruction just to prove a point." "Marcus," he hung up, but his mother's words echoed in his mind. God is trying to get your attention. At 4:00 p.m., Marcus's lawyer called with more devastating news. The IRS has frozen all your remaining accounts pending investigation. And Marcus, the criminal charges, they're filing them. Tax evasion, wire fraud, bribery. You're looking at 20 years if convicted. At 5:00 p.m., his closest friend, Daniel, a man he'd known since college, called. Marcus thought maybe, finally, someone was reaching out to support him. "Daniel, thank God you called. I'm not calling to help you, Marcus," Daniel interrupted, his voice hard. "I'm calling to tell you that I'm done. I've watched you for years treat people like garbage. I've watched you mock everything good and decent. I stayed quiet because we were friends, because I thought maybe you'd change. But you didn't. You just got worse. Richer and meaner and more arrogant. This collapse? You earned it. And I hope you learned something from it, though I doubt you will." The line went dead. Marcus sat in his office alone as the sun began to set on December 8th. 24 hours ago, he'd stood on a stage mocking God. Now he had nothing. His company, gone. His wealth, gone. His wife, gone. His friends, gone. His reputation, destroyed. But the collapse wasn't over yet. At 7:00 p.m., Marcus left his office for the last time. Security had already been instructed to change the locks. He was escorted out of the building by men who used to take orders from him. He went to his penthouse, but when he arrived, he discovered Victoria had been there. She'd taken everything, furniture, art, personal belongings. The place was empty except for one suitcase of his clothes left by the door with a note. "This is all you're getting. The rest is mine." Marcus stood in the empty penthouse, his footsteps echoing off the bare walls. He walked to the windows, the same windows where he'd toasted himself 24 hours earlier. The view was the same. The city sparkled below, indifferent to his suffering. But everything else was different. At 8:47 p.m., exactly 24 hours after his mocking challenge to God, Marcus Bentley felt something he hadn't felt in 30 years. Something he'd spent his entire adult life building walls against. Fear. Real, bone-deep, existential fear. Not fear of losing money. The money was already gone. Not fear of prison, though that loomed. But fear that maybe, just maybe, he'd been wrong. About everything. His chest tightened again. The pain was back, worse than before. He collapsed to his knees on the empty penthouse floor, gasping for breath. Heart attack, he thought. I'm having a heart attack, and there's no one here to help me. He reached for his phone to call 911, but his hands were shaking so badly he dropped it. The phone skittered across the floor, out of reach. Marcus was alone, on his knees in an empty penthouse, possibly dying. And in that moment, for the first time in 30 years, Marcus Bentley did something he swore he'd never do again. He prayed. Not a sophisticated theological prayer, not an intellectual argument, just 3 words, whispered through pain and tears and terror. God help me. The paramedics found him 30 minutes later. A neighbor had heard him fall and called 911. They rushed him to the hospital where doctors stabilized him. It wasn't a heart attack, they told him. It was a severe panic attack combined with extreme stress. Marcus spent the night in the hospital, alone. No wife came, no friends visited. His lawyer sent a text. We'll meet tomorrow to discuss your options. At 2:00 a.m., unable to sleep, Marcus stared at the hospital ceiling and did something else he hadn't done in decades. He thought about his father, who worked double shifts and never complained. His father, who prayed before every meal and thanked God even when there wasn't much food. His father, who'd said, "Son, one day you'll understand that we need God. Not when things are easy, but when they're hard." Tears rolled down Marcus's face. "Dad, I'm sorry," he whispered to the empty room. "You were right. I was wrong about everything." The next 3 weeks were the darkest of Marcus's life. Criminal charges were filed. He made bail but was required to wear an ankle monitor. His assets were frozen. He couldn't access his money, the money that was left anyway. He moved into a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city because he couldn't afford anything else. The penthouse, the cars, the private jet, all gone. Seized by authorities or claimed by Victoria in the divorce. Marcus Bentley, who'd been worth $3.7 billion, was now living in a motel room with 1 suitcase of clothes and $43 in his pocket. The media had a field day. From penthouse to poorhouse, the Marcus Bentley story. Atheist billionaire gets divine justice. Pride really does come before the fall. Marcus stopped reading the articles. He stopped checking social media. He stopped watching the news. He just sat in that motel room day after day, staring at the walls. One afternoon, there was a knock on his door. Marcus opened it to find his mother standing there. She looked older than he remembered, smaller, but her eyes were the same, full of love, full of that unshakable faith he'd mocked his entire life. "Mom, how did you find me?" "I never stopped looking for you, Marcus. Even when you stopped calling, even when you pushed me away." She stepped into the room and looked around at the sparse, depressing space. "Can I sit down?" They sat on the edge of the bed, the only furniture in the room besides a rickety chair and broken TV. Mom, you shouldn't be here. I'm toxic. Everyone I've ever known has abandoned me. You should too. His mother took his hand, the way she used to when he was a child. Marcus, do you remember what I told you at your father's funeral? When you said you wanted nothing to do with God? Marcus nodded, unable to speak. I told you that God didn't take your father away to hurt us, that this broken world is full of pain and death, but God is still good. Do you remember what you said to me? I said, Marcus's voice cracked. I said I was done with fairy tales. Yes, and I said something back to you. Do you remember? Marcus shook his head. No. His mother's eyes filled with tears. I said, one day, son, when you've built your towers high enough and they all come crashing down, you'll remember that God was always there waiting, not to punish you, but to catch you when you fall. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He doubled over, sobbing. Mom, I've been so stupid, so arrogant. I thought I was smarter than everyone. I thought I didn't need God. I thought I didn't need anyone. And now I have nothing. I've lost everything. His mother pulled him into her arms, holding him the way she did when he was a child. No, Marcus. Now you have exactly what you need. You have a clean slate. You have humility. And you have God, if you'll finally accept him. But why would God want me? After everything I've said, everything I've done. I mocked him publicly for 15 years. Marcus, that's the beauty of grace. God doesn't love you because you're good. He loves you because he's good. You can't earn his love and you can't lose it. All you have to do is surrender. Stop running. Stop fighting. Just surrender. Marcus wept in his mother's arms, decades of pride and pain and arrogance pouring out of him. I surrender, he whispered. God, I surrender. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And in that cheap motel room, with nothing left but his pride broken and his heart finally open, Marcus Bentley, billionaire turned beggar, gave his life to Jesus Christ. The legal battles took 2 years. Marcus cooperated fully with authorities. He testified against others involved in the schemes. He took full responsibility for his actions. Because he cooperated, his sentence was reduced to 5 years in prison with possibility of parole after 3. Prison was nothing like Marcus expected. In a strange way, it was exactly what he needed. No distractions, no empire to build, no image to maintain, just time. Time to think, time to pray, time to read the Bible his mother sent him. Marcus devoured Scripture. The passages that spoke to him most were about Paul, the religious persecutor who became Christianity's greatest evangelist. Marcus started a Bible study in prison. At first, only 2 men showed up. Within 6 months, it was 30. Within a year, the prison chaplain asked Marcus to help lead services. The man who had once mocked God from stages was now preaching about him from a prison chapel. The transformation was genuine. Anyone who visited Marcus could see it. The arrogance was gone. The condescension was gone. In their place was humility, gratitude, and a profound sense of purpose. His mother visited every week without fail. On one visit, Marcus asked her something that had been bothering him. Mom, do you think God orchestrated my fall? His mother thought carefully before answering. I think God allowed you to face the consequences of your own choices. You built an empire on lies, fraud, and arrogance. Those things always collapse eventually. That's just how the world works. But did God use your collapse to save you? Absolutely. Marcus nodded slowly. I lost $3.7 billion. After 3 years, Marcus was released on parole. He had no money, no job prospects, and no reputation to fall back on. What he did have was a story. He started small. He volunteered at homeless shelters. He spoke at addiction recovery meetings. He shared his testimony at small churches. I thought I was at the top of the world, he would tell people, but I was actually at the bottom. One of his talks was filmed and posted online. It went viral, not as big as his atheist speeches, but big enough. 5 million views. A publisher reached out. They wanted him to write a book about his fall and redemption. Marcus hesitated, but his mother encouraged him. Marcus, you're not profiting from your sin. You're sharing your testimony. He wrote the book. It was titled The 24-Hour Collapse: How Losing Everything Saved My Soul. It became a bestseller. Not because people wanted another success manual from a billionaire, but because people were hungry for a real story of humility, failure, and redemption. The book sales allowed Marcus to pay restitution to those he'd wronged. He couldn't pay back everything. That would take multiple lifetimes. But he paid what he could. He reached out personally to Sarah, his former assistant whose brother had died. He couldn't bring her brother back, but he apologized sincerely and donated money to a foundation in her brother's name supporting worker safety. 5 years after his release from prison, Marcus was invited to speak at a conference for business leaders. As he stood backstage waiting to go on, he thought about the last time he'd given a major speech. The gala, the mocking challenge to God, the arrogance. Now, as he walked onto this stage, he felt only gratitude. "My name is Marcus Bentley," he began, his voice humble and clear. 15 years ago, I built a billion-dollar empire without God. Or at least I thought I did. I mocked faith. I ridiculed believers. I proclaimed that success came from human effort alone. He paused, looking out at the audience. God didn't strike me down that night, but exactly 24 hours later, my entire world collapsed. For the next 30 minutes, Marcus shared his story. The fraud, the collapse, the prison, the redemption, the transformation. He didn't sugarcoat his sins. He didn't make excuses. He simply told the truth. He ended with this: I lost $3.7 billion, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because money can't buy peace. Success can't buy purpose. Pride can't buy salvation. The Bible says in Matthew 16:26, "What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?" I gained the world, and I almost forfeited my soul. But God, in His mercy, stopped me before it was too late. He allowed me to lose everything so I could find the one thing that actually matters: Him. The audience was silent. Then, one by one, they stood. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. After the speech, a young man approached Marcus. He was probably 25, wearing an expensive suit, carrying himself with the same arrogance Marcus once had. "Mr. Bentley," the young man said, "that was a nice story. But I have to be honest, I'm not religious. I'm building my own company, and I'm doing it without any divine help, just like you did. So why should I believe I need God if I'm already successful?" Marcus looked at the young man and saw himself 30 years ago. He smiled sadly. "You know what? You're right. You probably don't need God to be financially successful. I proved that. You can build empires without faith. You can accumulate wealth without prayer. But let me ask you something." The young man waited. When you're lying awake at 3 in the morning and all your success feels empty, who are you going to call? When your life collapses, and it will collapse eventually because everything built on pride eventually does, who's going to be there? When you're 65 years old and you realize that all your money and success bought you nothing that actually lasts, what then? The young man had no answer. Marcus put his hand on the young man's shoulder. "I'm not telling you to fail on purpose. I'm telling you not to wait until you fail to find God. Learn from my mistake. Put Him first now, while you still can. Trust me, it's a lot easier to find God when you're up than when you're down." Today, Marcus Bentley is 53 years old. He'll never be a billionaire again, and he doesn't want to be. He lives simply, works in ministry, and speaks at events around the world about the dangers of pride and the power of redemption. His mother is 81 now. She still comes to every one of his speaking engagements, sitting in the front row, tears streaming down her face as she watches her son, once so lost, now so found, share the gospel that he once mocked. Marcus remarried 3 years ago, not to someone wealthy or famous, but to a woman named Ruth, who works as a children's ministry director. They have a simple apartment, drive a used car, and spend their evenings leading Bible studies for young couples. "I used to measure my worth in billions," Marcus told an interviewer recently. "Now I measure it in changed lives. How many people have come to Christ because of my story? How many people have avoided the mistakes I made? That's the only metric that matters anymore." The interviewer asked him the question everyone wants to know. "Do you regret what happened? If you could go back and change things, keep your billions, avoid prison, would you?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Absolutely not. I wouldn't change a thing, because that 24-hour collapse saved my eternal soul. I'd rather be poor and saved than rich and lost. And believe me, for most of my life, I was rich and completely lost." The story of Marcus Bentley is a stark reminder of one of the Bible's most repeated warnings. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs 16:18. That verse has played out in countless lives throughout history. But Marcus's story is particularly powerful because his fall was so public, so complete, and so fast. 24 hours. That's all it took for $3.7 billion to disappear, for an empire to collapse, for a man to be brought to his knees. But here's the beautiful part of Marcus's story. God wasn't trying to destroy him. God was trying to save him. And the only way to save a man that proud was break him completely. As 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Marcus had to become weak, completely, utterly weak, before God's power could work in his life. Maybe you're watching this and you're successful. You've built a career, accumulated wealth, achieved recognition. There's nothing wrong with success. God blesses people with prosperity. But the question is, where's your heart? If it all disappeared tomorrow, would you be okay? Is your identity in what you've achieved or in whose you are? Or maybe you're like Marcus was, openly skeptical, maybe even hostile toward faith. You've built your life on your own strength, your own intelligence, your own effort, and it's worked so far. But I want to ask you the same question Marcus now asks young entrepreneurs. When everything collapses, and it will eventually, because nothing earthly is permanent, what will you have left? Or maybe you're already at rock bottom. You've lost everything. You feel like Marcus in that motel room, broken, alone, hopeless. Let his story give you hope, because the same God who met Marcus at his lowest point is waiting to meet you at yours. Romans 5:8 says, "But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." God doesn't wait for you to clean up your life. He meets you in the mess. He meets you in the pride. He meets you in the failure. All you have to do is what Marcus finally did: surrender. If this story impacted you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe they're building their life on pride like Marcus did. Maybe they need a warning. Or maybe they're at their bottom and need hope that God can redeem even the worst falls. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of redemption, faith, and God's incredible grace. And leave a comment. Have you ever experienced God humbling you? How did he use a difficult season to draw you closer to him?